भारत और नाइजीरिया के संबंध आपसी सहयोग, डेमोक्रेसी और लोगों की भलाई के लिए काम करते रहे।
The relations between India and Nigeria are based on mutual cooperation, understanding, and mutual respect. As two vibrant democracies and dynamic economies, we will continue to work for the benefit of our people.
दोनों देशों में सामाजिक और सांस्कृतिक विविधता हमारी पहचान है, हमारी ताकत है। के रिन्यूड होप एजेंडा और विकसित भारत 2047 के बीच कई समानताएं।
The social and cultural diversity in our two countries are indeed our identity and also our strength. In fact, Nigeria's renewed hope agenda and the Viksit Bharat, Developed India 2047, have several aspects in common.
और विस्तार से चर्चा की।
Last year, President Tinubu's visit to India added a new chapter to our relations. And today, we discuss in detail ways in which we can expand and strengthen our cooperation.
अर्थव्यवस्था, ऊर्जा, कृषि, सुरक्षा, फिनटेक, स्मॉल एंड मीडियम स्केल एंटरप्राइजिंग और सांस्कृतिक क्षेत्रों में नई संभावनाओं की पहचान की। एक करीबी और विश्वसनीय पार्टनर के रूप में नाइजीरिया के लोगों की आवश्यकताओं के अनुरूप स्किल डेवलपमेंट और कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग पर विशेष रूप से बल दिया जाए।
We have identified new opportunities in the areas of economy, energy, culture, defense, fintech, small and medium scale enterprise. And the area of culture cooperation. As close and trusted partners, we will continue and work towards the development and capacities of the people of Nigeria.
To share the path with भारत और नाइजीरिया भी मिलकर दोनों देशों के लोगों और पूरे अफ्रीका महाद्वीप की समृद्धि के लिए मिलकर अफ्रीका महाद्वीप की समृद्धि के लिए मिलकर आगे बढ़ेंगे।
As we said in Africa, a friend is someone you share the path with. And so, India and Nigeria, both countries, will work together to advance the interests of our own people and for the African continent to advance their prosperity.
हम करीबी समन्वय के साथ काम करते हुए ग्लोबल साउथ के हितों और प्राथमिकताओं को
Through close coordination and working together, we will advance the interests and priorities of the global south.
एक्सेलेंसी, एक बार फिर इस सम्मान के लिए मैं 140 करोड़ भारतवासियों की ओर से बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूं।
Excellency, once again, on behalf of 1.4 billion Indians, I wish to convey my deepest gratitude to you.
Thank you.
And with the remarks of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, this UN will come and the delegations will follow next. Thank you very much, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Republic of India.
All right, so that was the Indian Prime Minister giving his acceptance speech and showing appreciation. We must apologize, though, for the poor signal from the State House. The connectivity wasn't good enough. But we do know that it was a statement, a speech laced with gratitude, talking about the relations between Nigeria and India, which Jide Ojo was also talking about to have been quite beneficial. And apart from the bilateral relations, both countries also have platforms where they can both rub minds and contribute to the development of the international community, the G77, now BRICS, among others, the United Nations, among the, others. Nick Dazang, not many saw this coming at about this time. It happened a bit quite suddenly. But would you say are the major talking points from this visit?
Well, it happened suddenly, but I think Nigeria and India has a lot in common, some of which Jide talked or spoke to, and I had earlier on before now also spoken about some of these things. And recall that apart from the colonial experience that we shared with India, a lot of our military personnel also trained in India. I recall, for example, that generals like Lecourt, like Joe Garba, for example, trained in India, and some of their personnel too trained our military at the Nigeria institutions in Nigeria. So we've always had that relationship. And one thing I can also assure you is that Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution, the directive of state policy, principles of, it was taken lock, stock, and barrel from the Indian Constitution. So we bought that from there. They were the ones that insisted, on the state having certain objectives regarding the welfare of its citizens. And Nigeria borrowed from that idea. And there are other things too that we could learn, particularly now that economic reforms have been introduced by this government. And the government has been having issues dealing directly with the poorest of the poor. And under the watch of the present Prime Minister of India, one of the good things going for him was, apart from the fact that he was able to engender economic growth going to 6.7%, the highest in the world as at the time he was re-elected for a third term. One of the things he did was he successfully intervened in the lives of the poorest of the poor of India using an identity scheme called the Andhar. Now, this is something that, now that we have this crisis and someone has been appointed as a minister to administer this kind of intervention, we can borrow from. It's a digital system in which the identities of those individuals were captured, and then interventions were remitted to them directly to their accounts. So I would recommend that this is one of the things we could learn from the Indians. We could just look at the template and see how we can adapt it. We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Can that be likened to the NIN that we operate?
Exactly, but if there was NIN and then we were having issues, then we need to still interrogate the system. Why did the one we did before fail? Is NIN viable? Does every poor person have NIN? Because what from my own investigations, what transpired was that the template that was used before, even before the advent of the Tinubu administration, was not leak-proof. People just put together the names of people that were close to them, and then they disbursed monies to them. So at the end of the day, the poorest of the poor did not access these monies. Rather, it was people who were even comfortable, who are now accessing this money that was meant for the poorest of the poor, and therefore the necessary impact was not created. Thankfully, the person that has now been made minister is somebody I know whose pedigree in ICT is excellent. Because when I was in ANEC, he was a resident electoral commissioner, and his interventions, particularly on ICT, were always in fact, the savviest amongst the resident electoral commissioners. And I will invite him to take a look at the template that India used. Go and take a look at it. How was it used? Because it was, in fact, the New York Times did an article, an editorial praising the Indian government for using that particular template. So we need to look at it. We need to see how we can do something with adjustments and then replicate the same thing, and so that our economy can move forward.
All right, thank you very much, Nick Dazanga. I think there is more that can be borrowed from India, for instance. I do know that you don't just go on the streets, for instance, making change of currencies. It doesn't really happen. You have to go to designated places. I know this is also the same thing in places like Russia. And then you talk about the telecommunications. You pay for data, but you don't have to pay for local calls. That comes free, But while we look at all that we borrow, people-to-people relations between Nigeria and India, of course, there's a sizable India community here in Nigeria, and you can say same for Nigerians in India, whether in New Delhi or in Mumbai, you can say same for them. How can this be made to count even further?
Well, just as we saw from the brief speech that he gave, I don't think that is sufficient enough to explain, the reason for the visit. A lot of, talks are going to happen behind the camera, and we hope to hear, from them what they have been able to discuss. But expectations are that when there is this kind of visit, what are the burning issues on ground, especially that Jide has just talked about the BRICS, which Nigeria is participating. So what major countries in the BRICS, because India is among the major countries that form the BRICS.
Russia, China?
Yes, along Russia, China, and others. So it is, they tend to go around, to seek support of countries that are very important and strategic in their continents. Nigeria is a strategic country in Africa, and they really want to come down here. In the last 17 years, no Indian president, no Indian prime minister has visited Nigeria. So you could see that there's something burning that they really want to chase. But it's important also from the part of Nigeria, you know, for Nigeria to look at what it's going to gain from this bilateral relationship, especially the fact that we have, you know, apart from the Chinese population, that we have significant population of the Indians in Nigeria doing all sorts of business. And there is this saying in international relationship that a country should specialize in the production of a commodity for which it has a comparative cost advantage over other countries. In this kind of relation, Nigeria need to look at what gain it is going to get from India, and what is even the benefit, you know, the Indian citizens, you know, who are in Nigeria, you know, doing business. What is the comparative advantage that Nigeria can take? Because that's what India is doing already with Nigeria and other countries.
And there are lots of a number of prominent brands of Indian origin in Nigeria.
Yeah, exactly. So Nigeria, I hope that by now, a lot of analysis, strategic analysis must have been done, even before the visit, if it's not a sudden visit from what we are seeing. So that some of the advances would be made to the Indian nation, now that the president is here, and some promises will be made, so that Nigeria is going to come out stronger in the relationship and is going to maximize its benefits, you know, for the advantage of the country. We've seen cases where, you know, because in bilateral relationship, what normally happens is that the actors who are involved try to see how can they actually be the ones to gain advantage over the country with which it's relating. But this may not come out obvious in the discussions, but the way that the strategic document will show, it will show that which country has been able to do this. So we should be able to have our nation, you know, go into these discussions and try to see. Nigerians are now engaging with a lot of Indian companies, traveling to India to get, you know, samples of intellectual property, sometimes because they cannot replicate them because of the question of ownership in intellectual property. So do business with such countries who may have some advantages ahead of you in terms of technology, even in terms of, you know, ICT itself, in terms of commerce, and in terms of even administrative organization of the political system, way that they have this. You just talked about the national identification and all that. We have seen a situation where the Asian Tigers, what they did when they wanted to improve on that, they simply locked, you know, the British and the Americans in their own countries. They locked them in there for their own citizens to learn from them. And after some times, after their citizens must have acquired the technical know-how of some of these things, they now opened the borders and brought in some very important domestic policies that will give advantage to the citizens in order for them to gainfully be employed in different sectors of the economy. And I think Nigeria should be thinking big in this age of globalization in terms of those issues, and to see how best it can, you know, take advantage of this relationship.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Aminu Hayatu. Jide, you know, one more area to look at. I do know that in India, is it the overwhelming number of vehicles that you will see? Oh, I understand that collation has now kicked into gear in Akure, Ondo State. So let's hear what the declaration is.
After